So with the best of intentions, I set out to write a paranormal romance novel, and I'm thinking, well, I better start reading in my genre. And then I'm reading paranormal romance novels, and I'm not getting very far with them because I'm like, wow, there's too much an emphasis on, romance. And not enough on the fantastical elements, which should have been my first clue that I didn't really want to write that kind of book. But I didn't know that at the time, so I started writing. And so I took two main sources of information, two stories that I really like. And one is the TV series Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which now in retrospect has been categorized as urban fantasy. And True Blood, which is based on the Sookie Stackhouse novels, the Southern Vampire series, which is also urban fantasy. But I didn't know that, so I'm looking at them and I said, well, there's a few characteristics about them that I want to co-opt. And I would like to ideally write a book that could be turned into a series, sort of a series of standalone novels. It may be one of one or it may be one of 10. It just depends upon if the interest is there on my part and on the reader's part. So I noticed in both of these stories they have the characteristics of having an ensemble cast, meaning it's not just one character, it's going to be several characters. And you're going to have an interesting setting. There's going to be something that brings people into it. In Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where there was a hellmouth underneath town, there was an entrance to hell, which I now know is actually based on an actual thing from Greek tragedy. They used to actually depict entrances to hell up there on stage and do morality plays, and it's really a fascinating topic. Well, anyway, and there were multi-threaded plots, more like soap opera. I mean, why the Days of Our Lives stay on the air for so many years is because you have characters interacting with each other in interesting ways over multiple storylines. So these stories are not so much about what's happening at that particular episode, it's about the characters and how the monster of the week or the problem of the week is going to bring them together. So I wanted to do all of these things. So I came up with an ensemble cast. So that's something I would normally advise against. If you're a beginning writer, the temptation as a beginning writer is to write movies or novels with great big casts of characters, 10, 20 characters, because more must be better. And that actually can weaken your story because you don't really get a chance to develop these characters in depth. They just become names interacting with each other. So I've always kept my stories down to try 2 or 3 characters if I can, with a few exceptions. But this one I said I'm going to come up with some interesting characters. And so I came up with 4. My main character, her name is Bessie, and she has just moved to this small town, which I've based on Stanton, where I live. It's a fictitious town named Augusta. And she's a recent divorcee. And I did that because divorce is a topic that I am emotionally familiar with. I have not been through a divorce myself, but I've been through my parents' divorce, who they divorced after 30 years when I was adult, and it was a terrible, tragic thing, and to this day I still don't, my father and I don't speak to each other, and I've been through the divorce of my close friends and been involved with their issues, and it's something I feel like I understand a lot. And I did that because my other strong belief about writing fiction is that you should have emotional power in it. And the easiest way to put emotional power into your writing is really to write about something that you know, something that matters to you. And that where as soon as you start writing about the topic, you might get a little bit upset. And if you could do that when you're writing, then you know that your readers or people who are watching your movies might feel the same way. So the other characters I put in were her ensemble of friends in the area. She meets a sheriff's deputy in the town of Augusta. And because I feel passionately about things like gay rights and gay marriage, I said might as well make him gay and explore what his life is in a small town as a macho police detective, deputy in a small town, but he's gay. Is he going to be in the closet or out of the closet? And I figured, given the environment down here in the Bible Belt and people's attitudes in Virginia toward gays, he would probably be in the closet and be in kind of a hostile work environment for that. But because he is in a small Virginia town, well, he might also, he's not perfect, he may actually have some racial prejudices of his own, and particularly being a police officer and you're driving around and the people you're arresting. So he's going to be aware of the fact that he does have some racial problems, some stereotypes that he's battling against in his own mind, that he does treat white and black people a little bit differently. And that's something I thought would help make the character complex and give him some interesting issues to explore. So these characters are also going to be a little bit in opposition to each other. So another supporting character is the black kid who's just moved to the town from the inner city. He's come here from D.C. His mom brought him down here to get him away from drug culture and from the crime and to start a new life down here in the Shenandoah Valley. So of course, who's the first person who he comes into conflict with? It's the sheriff's deputy. And so when the story begins, they have a backstory. They have a history together. They know each other. And by the end of the story, maybe they're going to become friends. And then just to make things a little bit more interesting, we have another secondary character. We have the crazy old lady, the cat lady who lives next door. And she's a widow. Now, did you guys see the first episode of American Horror Story, the AMC series? So I watched the pilot episode, and I don't think I'm going to watch much more of it, but there is a character in there who's sort of like this one. She's the creepy lady who lives next door. She's sort of from the Virginia gentry, and she sort of kind of comes in your house unannounced, and you're just like, whoa, what's your deal? My lady, what's that?
Jessica Lange.
Oh, Jessica Lange, that's right. My lady is a little bit less sinister than that, but she is kind of the crazy old widow who lives next door, and she has a past. And so maybe she's not really a widow. Maybe her husband has just gone away for a while, and maybe this was an exceptionally long-lived guy. So she has an entire mystery who's associated with her. So these were some of the hallmarks that I wanted to have of a story like this. These are the characters who I want to interact with each other in interesting ways. Now the other thing about Buffy and about Sookie Stackhouse, these stories that I thought made them interesting, is there has to be some reason for the paranormal creatures, the mystical creatures, to come into their lives. In Buffy, it was a Hellmouth. And in the Sookie Stackhouse novels, it was Sookie, because she's a telepath. So there has to be a reason for why the monsters and all the crazy creatures would want to interact with them. And so, what possible reason would the creatures of the world want to come to the little town of Augusta to deal with Bessie and all her crazy friends? And particularly since she doesn't have any supernatural powers of her own, at least in this story. And my wife and I were walking around Gypsy Hill Park in Stanton one day, and we're talking about that. I said, why would people come to town? I said, well, I wanted to set the town in Stanton. This is a town that I like a lot. Of course, I made it the town of Augusta, so I can get away from issues of libel, and so I could reform the town how I wanted. I can change the structure of the court system, and I can put crazy mayors and sheriff's deputies, and I don't have to worry about interacting with real people. I can change the geography as I want, but it's still kind of set in Stanton. You know, hence we got the clock tower on the cover. But what about this place is special that people would want to come here? Well, below the city of Stanton, I don't know if you guys are aware, there is a labyrinth of caverns underneath the town. It's all been kind of plugged up now. I think it may have been called Stanton Caverns. So, ooh, that's a very interesting element of the geography. So we were thinking, what if people came here, vampires and creatures of the night or whatever, is because this area is actually sort of a convalescent home for supernatural creatures. You get fatigued, you get injured or whatever, you come here and you relax down in the caverns. Think of it as sort of a supernatural hospital.
A spa.
A spa or something. I mean, if you're injured, you come, maybe you need medical attention, maybe you need psychological help, maybe you need somebody to help you complete your quest. So that was the idea that I had.